evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Central Branch of the Elyria Public Library in the 5th Ward. I'd like to welcome you all tonight to this Q&A between our two candidates for prosecutor for Lorain County. Before we get started, I need everybody to please rise, face the flag, and let's have a pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, before we get started, any questions I pull out that have a name on it, they're getting tossed. I just want you to know that this is about the prosecutor's office and what the individual candidate intends to do if elected into that office. Before we get started, I have a special guest here. Ward Councilman. We're doing these in the 5th Ward because our library happens to be, and we're also pushing the vote. Everybody needs to get out and vote. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Brad Armstrong.
Good evening. Thank y'all for coming. This is an exciting event. I've been waiting to hear these two great gentlemen speak. I know what they're about, but a lot of y'all out there don't know. So this gives everybody a great opportunity to realize who do you want to be the next prosecutor. With that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and pass the torch back to Russ. Again, thank y'all for coming out. Let's have a great show tonight.
Thank you, Brad. I need an adjustment.
We're picking it up somewhere.
They're picking it up somehow. All right, there we go. Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to give each candidate 2 minutes to open and tell you a little bit about themselves and get into their intentions, and then we will start polling your questions, and they will each have 2 minutes to answer those questions. So, without any further ado, JD, you want to go first?
Sure, thank you.
Microphone's right there for you.
Oh, I don't need this?
You need this for the room
okay.
and that for out on the air.
All right. Can everybody hear? Is this on? All right. Hello, everybody. First of all, I want to thank you for having me here, Russ. We had good conversations beforehand. I look forward to another one. I want to also thank Councilman Armstrong. I've watched your rise into politics, and it's been a joy, man. Thank you very much for having us. I was born right down the street. I was born in EMH in January of 23. And so in January 23rd of 1981.
Say you're not old enough. You're not old enough.
And so my family, we moved beginning out to LaGrange. We lived in LaGrange off of Indian Hollow for a little bit of time, off of Hidden Canyon, if anyone's familiar. And my family, my dad had a couple of farm animals. I'm not sure exactly what they were for, Dad, but thanks. That was interesting growing up. And so we had this little farm, and we had goats and rabbits and all this stuff. And so from there, what we did is we moved to Elyria. So then I moved over to Cleveland Street over here off of Homer Street, which is off Cleveland Street, not too far from Twisted Shade. So from about kindergarten to 5th grade, I went to Ely Elementary School. It was an interesting experience. I had a lot of fun. I had a brother that's 16 months younger than me, so I had a really good childhood. And I had 2 great parents, which is worth a lot of money that we didn't have at the time, but it's invaluable. After that, we moved out to Fireland School District. And if anyone's familiar with Fireland, it's a little bit more rural. Thank you, Mary. It's a little bit more rural. And so my mom and dad moved us out there. And I went to high school at Fireland High School. I graduated in 1999. From there, I went and studied economics at Oberlin College. I graduated Oberlin College in 2003. And then I decided I wanted to go to law school. So I went to Case Western Reserve. I think Tony went to Case as well. Expensive school, huh, Tony?
It is.
So and too expensive. So I went to law school, graduated, and I was down about $190,000 as a 26-year-old young lawyer. So what I did from there on is I was always interested in the criminal world. So what I decided to do was put my own shingle out, and I practiced criminal defense law for the next 15 years.
30 seconds.
And enjoyed it. It was an interesting experience to get you in the courtroom, get you to meet a lot of people. I met a lot of police officers during that time. And then I grew my love for the law. In 2016, I ran against the sitting county prosecutor, Dennis Will. I was unsuccessful, but I was close. And so for the next 4 years, I just worked really hard and kept campaigning, never gave up. And in 2020, I was able to successfully take this seat. Thank you very much.
And time, yes. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tony Sillo.
Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here. We appreciate the opportunity to get a chance to tell what we're all about. I am a lifelong resident of Lorain County. I'm 58 years old. I've been married 20 years. I graduated from Avon Lake High School in 1984. I went to Bowling Green University, graduated with honors. I went to Case Western as well, and I graduated with honors. I have been a lawyer for 31 years, 28 of which has been in public service, 27 of which was at the Lorain County Prosecutor's Office, where I tried, a few hundred cases that were jury trials, numerous murders, death penalty cases, public corruption, sexual assaults, you name it, during that time. In doing that, I had an opportunity to really thrive, learn the law, and try to teach people. I had an opportunity to be the mentor towards Sherry Glass, who's a judge, Mike Kinlan, who went to defense work. We weren't happy about that. And other people. I think that I have a lot more experience, and I would ask you to listen to the questions, and I hope this gives you a little bit of background about me so that you can put into focus when I answer the questions, what created me.
All good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Gentlemen, I'm writing it down right now. Nobody can see it. Number between 1 and 5.
4.
2.
2. You guys are on both sides of it. So I'm going to change the number and go ahead. Number between 1 and 5. We're seeing who goes first.
2.
3.
Well, you can't touch 1. So Tony or JD, you get to pick the first card.
Do I give it to you?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
All right. First question. How do you plan on improving relationships with other agencies who currently do not have a good relationship with now?
Well, I mean, there's going to be a new leadership in that particular agency. So I'm really looking forward to it. I've met both those individuals. I know one of them real well, Rich Resendez, obviously. Rich works for me. His leadership is unquestioned in my mind. When Rich got in the office, I very quickly realized what talents Rich had and his abilities with people. And to me, that's always the most important factor. So as far as the new sheriff, it's going to be someone new. I've got to speak with Jack. I don't know Jack very well, but we spoke, and he seems to be a fine gentleman as well. So I think that's going to be a pretty easy transition. My relationships with all the other police agencies is absolutely great. I mean, when I first got in, one of the problems and one of the kind of the problematic areas that I had to encounter was the relationships that suffered between the last prosecutor's office and the police. And the way I was able to do that is I have 5 very talented investigators, and they're all experienced police officers. And so what we did is we created liaisons. And those liaisons now have several police departments that they're each capable of serving. And so no longer do police come in and get a hassle. Now they get served. And we quickly, they have a point person they can talk to and then get information very quickly. And the relationships between police and this office is extremely beneficial and healthy. Thank you.
Okay. You guys get 2 minutes.
It's kind of hard to gauge time.
Same question to you, Tony. How do you plan on improving relationships with other agencies who currently do not have a good relationship with now?
Well, I think it starts off with that I had the experience with those agencies and working trials for years. I was up taking search warrants and taking questions for over 20 years, 24 hours, 7 days a week. That has allowed me to cultivate relationships and to be able to help direct what you're going to need for a successful prosecution. I believe that things fester when you don't have meetings with everybody and they get to do their airing of the grievances, the Festivus kind of theme. So I would plan on starting monthly meetings with all of the leaders of the Detective Bureau to go through things so that we would make sure we weren't wasting resources, that we had a chance to get together, talk about what was festering, if one agency's fighting with another agency or if their agency's unhappy with something the prosecutor's office do, and put it behind us. Give us a chance to use the investigative tools and put the cases first. I think when people are given an opportunity to express themselves in a more coherent and a monthly basis, it's much less likely to fester. And I mean, I still stay in touch with a lot of people that were police officers. They were my friends. We did a lot of cases together. a lot of murder cases, and we made them a lot better. I'm of the opinion you go out and you personally go with them and you go through what things need to be done in a case, because while they're looking at it as an investigatory issue, it's important that the prosecutor's office looks at it as, what are we going to need in court? So what you need in court is not always the same thing as an investigation, and to do it earlier and to lock people in and to see the actual way things go down the line so that you can pull it all together and not have to scramble at the end and have all of those things in place is a much better approach that I would institute.
All right, thank you, Tony. You get to pick the next question. Anyone in there?
It was an easy one, right?
Nobody knows.
There you go.
No, pick another. This is to Tony. What is your stance on assisting victims filing civil protection orders, whether they have a criminal case or not?
I think it's important. When I was there, that was done routinely, because you have citizens walking in that are scared and they're going to need the help. And we had victim witness people that were in a position, like Kathy, to go up there, explain the process, put them in the right place, and potentially put something in that doesn't lead to a criminal case later on. And it was my recollection that the grants themselves required cooperation and for us to handle it if it was certain times. I think that when you do that, you also are making relationships in the community with people, and people can have trust in the office because you're not just saying and passing it on. I know in the time I worked there, whenever anybody called the police department that didn't get an answer and was referred to the prosecutor's office for something, those people were already a little downhearted because they didn't get a chance to just tell their story and they think they're just getting passed along. So when you can do those things and provide that kind of service to people, I think it really makes the prosecutor's office and county government stand out in their mind and provides confidence in how we do things.
You guys, you get 2 minutes. We're going to have a lot of questions.
I like questions.
All right, JD, same question to you. What is your stance on assisting victims filing civil protection orders, whether they have a criminal case or not?
Well, I think it's important. I mean, it's a scary system for most people. And most people aren't really involved in it, so they don't really understand the mechanisms involved. And, doing defense work and being an attorney for 15, 17 years before I took office, I dealt with civil protection orders. I defended them, and I also represented victims in it as well. But what I can tell you is it's confusing. So when you have people in your victims advocate group that are able to go down there and guide them, it's always helpful. And we have a fantastic group of individuals that works in our victims advocate group, and they guide these people and let them know what the procedures are that is involved. And, listen, I mean, anyone that's ever been a victim of a crime or knows somebody that's a victim of a crime or been involved in stalking, because there's a couple of different types of civil protection orders, it's a scary situation. And sometimes they might not ultimately gain, they might not get the civil protection order granted, but at least that they have the ability to have someone go there and help them get along. And we've had a lot of people that come and ask our office for help, and we try to give them as much as we can.
This is funny, guys. You still had another 30, but when I got on radio at first, it was like, no, man, you only did like 5 minutes.
It's hard. It's hard to gauge it.
We got to fill that up.
Yeah.
All right, JD, your card, please.
All right.
This is to you, yes. What is your vision for the office? How will you best serve the needs of the tax-paying public?
Well, the ultimate goal is always to get crime. And so far, that's what we've seen in our communities. That's the ultimate goal. I think the community policing is the future of law enforcement. I think that takes somebody at the helm of the prosecutor's office that has social skills and people skills. I happen to believe that that's one of my strong suits. I like people. I enjoy people. I care for people. So I think that, what we have to do is just keep getting crime down. And how do we do that? We communicate effectively with police. I mean, listen, there's no doubt about it that the relationships that now exist between police and the prosecutor's office is 10 times better than what it was before. I mean, there's no question. And I mean, why is that? It's because when they come to the office now, we have a can-do kind of attitude. I mean, there were cases that were passed up before me that we took on, and we rejuvenated those cases. One of them was a small Nicholas Cooper, 3-month-old child, beaten to death by their babysitter. The previous administration didn't want to handle the case. We took it over, thanks to Buddy Seibert, your hard work, Buddy. We were able to gain a conviction, so that 3-month-old child got justice. And those types of cases, we got to just keep communicating, keep getting crime going down. There's double-digit crime reductions in major street crime in Lorain and Elyria. I just had a conversation with Chief McCann, and he indicated the crime is down. So that's always the goal. Another case, Jessica Baker. She was the victim of a shooting in Lorain. There was a can't-do attitude. Well, we took on that case and we got justice. There was 3 co-defendants that shot in that car.
30.
And 2 of them pled guilty. The other one we won by jury trial. That's how you do it. And when you're aggressive, you communicate well with others, and you have people skills, crime can go down. And that's what we're experiencing now.
All right, Tony, what is your vision for the office? How will you best serve the needs of the tax-paying public?
Well, the vision for my office is a couple-fold. First, I think there needs to be a reorganization of how things are set up. They have lost a numerous amount of employees. They have the chief of the criminal division presently in a courtroom while he's trying to do things because they can't find people to take the jobs. Despite $1 million increase in a budget, people are not taking the jobs. So that starts with the atmosphere in an office and putting people in a position to go. What I think has been messed up at this point is the juvenile system used to be the farm leagues to bring people up into the criminal division because you learned the same laws, you were doing bench trials, and you had a foundation when you were brought up. So I think somebody that actually has trial experience needs to be put in there because you can't use the chief of criminal to do that. He's already in a position where he's going to flounder just based upon being in a courtroom and trying to handle the murders. And the only difference is with that foundation, they know the laws, they know how to handle things, and it gets brought up to those. So that's one thing that I think needs to be done. Jessica Baker, that was my case, but that was tried by the Attorney General's office afterwards because the current prosecutor had represented one of the defendants. So that really wasn't Lorain County Prosecutor's office. That was Dan Caceres. And as for other things, I think you need to talk to the community. I think you need to talk to the Urban League. I think you need to talk to the churches. I think you need to talk to Licata. I think you need to be in touch with things that are on the ground and try to start programming that's going to stop these things from happening and try to. One of the things I learned when I was in juvenile for 2 years is you can affect those kids more than anywhere else and stop them. But when you get to a point where people feel hopeless and they don't think that their lives are meant anything by anybody else, you've lost the battle. So you have to try to put programming in to stop it up front. Now, if people decide they're still going to break things, you got to provide safety for the community. You have to go through and prosecute and do those things.
All right. Tony?
Yep.
Pick a card.
I'm with the ace of spades.
All right, Tony, please give 3 top priorities you will do if elected.
The first priority is I've spent a lot of time going out to the township meetings. They seem like groups of lost people that don't get any attention. I have been asked to please, can you get us an answer in under a year? This is not okay. Show that you're interested in them. The second thing that I would do dovetails into a little bit on building a more successful office. I handled thousands of cases. I had hundreds of jury trials. And while I understand there's other parts of the office and I can't assign myself to a courtroom, I can work with those prosecutors to make them better because I've had that many trials. I can spot the issues. I can talk to the police and we can go through and I can show them, as I did a lot of other prosecutors, what needs to be done in an individual case to make it better. Because our police stats at this point are at 54%. In the 12 years I was in the criminal division, they were at 85%. gun specs are being handed out at this point like it's Halloween candy. That just can't happen. There's always been an animosity for judge not sending people to prison, but you're getting rid of the mandatory time in those circumstances where you could keep the community safe. So I think you have to prioritize, and I think you have to show compassion at the same time and work together with everybody to get the job done.
All right. JD, please give 3 top priorities you will do if elected.
Yeah, continue with the communication with police. I mean, that to me is the most important issue, and that's one I think we've been so successful at. The other one is we're starting new programs. So we're always starting new programs. We have a program now for economic fraud that was began by my investigators. And what we do is we go out and we act like as a resource center for individuals that are victims of economic fraud. Now, this is pretty scary stuff. I mean, these are your loved ones, these are your aunts and your uncles and your grandparents that are subject to these things. And what we've become is kind of a resource center for individuals that are interested in pursuing these types of claims. Now, we can't handle them a lot of the times because they're also, a lot of times are federal cases because they tend to cross state lines. But we act as a resource center. So we've done that. We've also been extremely active in human trafficking. Now, this is a problem that's not going to go away. And we've been that. I think we've done 7 or 8 different stings, 40 or 50 arrests. We had an individual that was being trafficked by her own husband. I mean, violently. And we were able to intervene with that kind of case. We also dealt with a case with Stephen Gilbert. He was a defendant in Elyria. Who eventually we gained 178 years as a sentence. That sent a message. It sent a message throughout the community that type of behavior is not going to be accepted in Lorain County. So developing new programs, the young attorneys that we have are talented. I just had a detective from Sheffield Village that had a case with one of my newer prosecutors. And he said she's a killer. I mean, we've got great new talent in there. And so I hope to foster that talent as much as possible and to continue the trajectory of crime going down in the county. That's ultimately the biggest goal.
All right. JD.
No, I answered that one. Okay.
You can have it, though.
I don't want it again. I don't want it, and they don't want me to hear it.
Piece of paper, so I know who's next.
None of them want to hear me
I
say
learned
it
that
again.
with Jack and Rich. So. Did you openly oppose issue 20? And if not, please, or if no, please explain why not.
Now, the issue 20 the issue 20 with regards to the new districting of the, yes. No, listen, I don't get involved in, I need this. I don't really get involved in that because I represent the Board of Commissioners. So those types of issues I kind of stay clear of. There's certain rules when you represent the Board of Commissioners that you can't really dive into those types of issues. So there's been several times during my tenure where I was asked to kind of make political statements about certain issues. And I've had to kind of wade out of those waters because of my representation with the Board of Commissioners.
All right, Tony, did you openly oppose issue 20? And if no, please explain why not.
I really didn't get involved very much. It's been my thought as a prosecutor, you may have to enforce the law, write briefs, and do things that are to keep the law in place or to defend the law. So at that point, I think we do agree on this, that you really can't be the advocate for certain laws. It's your job at that point to enforce the laws as they're done. Because if you don't do that, you're becoming the legislature. You can, as the prosecutor, just decide, hey, I'm not going to follow a law because I don't like it. That is not your job. If there's a death penalty case, you're supposed to go forward with the death penalty case because that's the oath you took. If you want to change the law, you go to Columbus and you change the law. You go through places like OPAA and you go testify in front of the House and the rest of it, and you try to change the law, but it's a very big dangerous thing when you stop applying the law.
All right. Tony.
Yes. Lucky card.
This is interesting. I'm going to read it. As a seasoned prosecutor, do you believe any of Trump's felony convictions should be overturned on appeal? If yes, which convictions and why?
Well, I've got to tell you, I do not have enough knowledge of actually everything that went into that. I did watch some of civil case. That was not a conviction. So I don't think I really actually can comment particularly on that one.
Well, I had to bring it in here.
I know.
We need to lighten the mood a little. Okay,
Same
JD,
question?
coming your way. You remember that long drawn out question?
I do remember
All
that
right,
long drawn out
there you
question.
go.
You know, I'm also of the opinion, you know, I'm similar to Tony. I mean, you know, when you're in this business long enough, you learn that you shouldn't have an opinion unless you're sitting in that courtroom. I remember as a young lawyer, I was involved in someone tagged me on Facebook about some trial that was going on in the common pleas,
And I was doing defense work at the time. And it was a case that was, I think it was relatively notorious. It was in the papers. So it was something that somebody was talking about. And they asked me what my opinion was. And I said, I have no clue. I'm not sitting in the courtroom. And they were aghast. It's like we've gotten to a point in society where we think we know the facts and we have no idea what the facts are. And so I think we got to be very careful with that type of thing. So the reality of it is, if I'm not sitting in the courtroom actually viewing the evidence, I'm very careful of rendering an opinion for a case that I know nothing about. Those kinds of situations can get you in trouble, and it's not the correct way to do it.
All right, we're headed over to JD. If elected or re-elected, what is your plan to reduce the number of employees who seek employment elsewhere?
Is that mine or Tony's?
You-
Okay. Well, it's a tough labor market out there to begin with. So it's a very difficult market
No matter what industry you're in. What we did for the first time in the prosecutor said that was not done by my predecessors was we actually created job descriptions for workers. Imagine that. You know, we actually have job descriptions where workers can actually know what their positions are.
We had a law firm come in and we did that. You know, listen, it's important for people to have a really strict idea of what their job expectations are. And in doing that, you know, you get turnover because now we have standards. We have
things that we want people to live up to. This is tax money that's coming in here. It's public money. We want people to perform. And so when you enforce those kind of standards for the first time in the office, it creates some turnover, and we've experienced that. However, we've got great people in there. I mean, we do. We have wonderful people, and the you know, the proof's in the pudding. The police are happy. Crime's going down. You know, that's what happens when you create standards. And you know, it's not always easy. I've had to make very difficult decisions about staffing. And it's not something that I take any pleasure in when someone leaves. It's something I want to avoid. But I think I have the type of attitude when I walk around the office. I know people's families. I know what's going on in their lives. I think that keeps people around as long as you can. I think you have to be good with people. And like I said, I think that's my strong suit. So yeah, I mean, when you create job descriptions for the first time, it does cause some turnover. We've experienced that. But we've got really good candidates. I've got an interview with a really wonderful individual tomorrow morning about a job. So they're out there, even though in the job market it's still tough to hire anybody in any industry. We're very happy with our progress.
All right, Tony, if elected, what is your plan to reduce the number of employees who seek employment elsewhere?
Well, one, I think you have to create a better environment than what exists there at this point. I mean, I've been in touch with people that have left. I think there were 22 out of maybe a little under 100 employees that left in a 12-month period. And, you know, between the secret settlements and the rest of it, it's become very difficult to attract people. Now, when I left the prosecutor's office, I went to the attorney general's because I wasn't happy with the direction of the office. I made no secret of that. And I had a chance to then go around the state trying cases that other communities couldn't deal with, either by they were too complex or they had conflicts. And what I learned was the office had a very poor reputation around the state. The people that worked in those offices did not want to go to that office because of what was going on there. It had went that far. I would talk to the elected prosecutors where I was sent to be brought up to date, and they would say, this guy has nothing to do with the OPAA, the Ohio Prosecuting Attorneys Association. He doesn't build any relationships with them, and he's not doing any of the things necessary. And these people are career prosecutors that want to know that they're being supported in their position. And that just wasn't happening. I can do that. You can't just throw money at the problem when you have $1 million extra in your budget from when you started 3.5 years ago and hope that people are going to stay. People want to like their job. They want to be treated better. They don't want to just hide in their offices and wonder when the chief of staff is going to go crazy on them.
Your car.
Sure.
If elected or reelected, how will you advance the opportunity or the operation of the office in the future?
Well, twofold. I talked to you a little bit about the civil division and the township trustees, that they're currently having all of the issues. I would be dedicating 2 people to learn township trustee law and to be able to go around. And also I would put them together with mentors that I have connections with from going around, so that they would have people to rely upon so they can get answers. I should never hear from a township trustee, can you get us an answer in under a year? We'll support you if you can just do that. That's unacceptable. So I think putting them into a position where they have access to other people, where they can get quicker things, they are directed where to look for the civil division, is a very important thing to do. And I talked to you a little bit about the juvenile system and the need to revamp that and to have somebody that can actually teach these younger lawyers and in-house people. Because the issue with taking people from other prosecutor's office every time is a lot of times you're getting the exported problems of people that didn't do well socially or for another reason at that office, and now you're just taking on another problem. They may look good in paper, but they may not turn out. I mean, they had one that lasted 2 months from the city of Cleveland that they tried to put into Jim Maraldi's courtroom, and he was gone. So I think doing those things, combined with my ability to actually sit down with prosecutors and to evaluate the cases and show them where these things have problems, what they can do to make things better, cultivating the relationship directly with the police department, going over there and going through the evidence with them, and going through and saying, hey, we need these things. We believe the defense is going to go there. I'm probably the best person to see those things. I have a lot of respect for Chris Pierre, but I have a heck of a lot more experience in doing that with those cases at this point. And so I think that would make a large difference in the operation and the successful prosecutions, which are way down on guilty verdicts on the actual trials that go forward.
And time. If elected or reelected, how will you advance the operation of the office in the future?
You know, Attorney Sillo, you know, when you worked for me for the 1.5 years, you handled 13 cases. You had plenty of time. You had plenty of time to mentor these young attorneys. That's what I wanted you to do. I mean, listen, you know, I did defense work, like I said, for 15 years. The idea that I wasn't in a courtroom is ridiculous. I didn't try cases is ridiculous. Listen, defendants, prosecutors naturally try more cases than defense counsel. That's kind of the way it goes. There's a lot of cases that I wanted to try that I never was able to try. But the ones I tried, I had a lot of success at. I bet you with the trials I conducted, I probably won 75% of them. Now, a lot of that is because you try cases that you think you can win. There's no success in trying cases that are losers, because the defendant usually gets 3 times the sentence. So you got to be very careful, and the only way that you do that is by experience. You go through the courts and you find out what cases you can win or not. So the idea that I can't provide any kind of guidance to these lawyers, or that I don't, is just silly. And coming from the defense perspective, I'm able to see weaknesses that a lot of prosecutors don't see. For example, I would put my defendants on a lot of the times on the stand. Now, I vetted these defendants, so I was confident in the way they would testify. But what I learned with prosecutors is that they weren't very good at cross-examining. And the reason is because not many defendants put on a case. And so they're not really used to cross-examining. And it's not a skill that they really develop really well. They're very good at direct testimony. And maybe some defense attorneys probably could increase their skill level on direct testimony. But on cross-examination, usually defense attorneys have the edge. So a lot of times when I would put my defendant on the stand in front of a prosecutor, they really wouldn't know how to handle it. Because obviously I wasn't going to telegraph that I was putting my defendant on. That wouldn't be a smart move. But what I found is that they were lacking in that particular arena, is the art of cross-examination. And so I think there's always improvement there.
All right, next question, JD. this is to JD first. When did you first realize that Nancy's, see, I'm not going there. This isn't about past cases. This is what is going to happen in the office of prosecutor in the coming years. What do you think is the biggest issue with the justice system, and how would you fix it?
Oh, geez. That's a really good question. I tend to have the opinion that the justice system's about as good as you can get. It's run by individuals and human beings, so there's always going to be errors. I field a lot of questions on how we can get better. I think, the idea is always, well, is it training? I tend to believe that police officers are really well trained. In my opinion, I see a lot of cases, especially use of force cases, that we've tried to used to take about 1.5 years to determine whether there was a good shoot or not. Those days are over. But it's a system that, because there's people involved, there's going to be mistakes. However, whenever I had a client that I thought maybe was innocent, and I had a few of them. Now, there's not a lot of them. It doesn't happen very often, but I did have a few of them. And when I had those few, what I would usually do is investigate the case, get affidavits from witnesses, and I would present it to the prosecutor's office. And typically, they did the right thing. They would find that there's a problem with this case, and even if the client wasn't innocent, truly innocent, they at least determined that there wasn't enough to go forward. And those cases kind of filtered out. So, in the sense of does it work? I think the vast majority of the time it does. And when I hear criticisms about the justice, I'm always interested in what the opinion is and how to make it better, and I rarely hear that. I hear a lot of negatives, but I don't hear a lot of suggestions on how to make it better. And I think that's a testament of how the law really does try to get it right. Now, there's always room for an improvement, but I tend to believe in the justice system, unlike maybe some of the news media that kind of tries to divide us maybe with that issue. But I tend to have a pretty favorable opinion of police in general and the criminal justice system at large. That's my opinion.
All right, Tony, what do you think is the biggest issue with the justice system, and how could you fix it?
Well, the biggest problem with the justice system currently has been the number of cases that are out there that just languish. And now, we do disagree on how you should deal with police shooting cases. I've made it clear. One of the things I handled for the AG's office were police shootings, use of force cases, and I think it's a better practice to actually present those and then to put those things immediately onto the internet so people can have public confidence. Because right or wrong, people assume there's a small thin blue line, and that they're going to just protect their own. I also think it's a danger if you just write letters to get rid of these things, because the first time you take one to the grand jury, you're just basically saying this person's done it. Because that's the message you're sending. These ones didn't need anything, we're going to send this one. Lastly, when you're dealing with police shooting cases, I never think you should be a member of the union. You're actually ruling on those police shootings. I think it's going to get attacked at some point, and whether it's true or not, it's still going to be the appearance of how things look. I think that is a poor thing to do. For the rest of it, it goes back to the training. It goes back to putting people there, and it goes back to being involved in the OPAA so that you can go change laws. We made an attempt several times that was actually partially thwarted when it was Judge Burge going down to Columbus to get rid of the ability of just the defendant to have the jury trial. Most states, 38 states, and the federal government have it so that both sides must waive off on a jury, because you have a right to a jury trial, but you don't have a right that is absolute. So we thought that would be better, because certain judges are going to have certain ways of looking at things. And as soon as the defense attorney draws that judge, he is one happy person. That's his audience, and you're not getting to a jury. So I think it should take both sides. And I think having involvement in the OPAA so that you can actually do these things, join up, use that PAC basically, and thank you.
Next question.
Oh.
Tony, what is your opinion of a person that was wrongfully convicted? What would you do about it?
Well, within the bounds of the law, you do what you have. Now, that's a couple different ways to look at it. There's things that are involved DNA, where somebody is completely exonerated on a post-conviction petition, and there's motions for new trials and other things. you don't want to convict anybody. I think an integrity review board is a good thing. I thought when I was doing the death penalty cases that what Cuyahoga County had, where we could actually go and you talk to the defense attorneys and you go through the mitigation and you figure out whether your resources should be used on that. So I think you try to deal with it up front to find, and believe me, I got rid of a lot of cases where I didn't think the person did it because you were ethically bound not to prosecute somebody you didn't think committed the crime. The problem with, I believe you're going with Nancy Smith, it was reviewed by 7 courts, and you can't allow a judge to violate the law because that doesn't work out, because the judge doesn't stop with the first law. Judges are supposed to follow the law. So I understand that there were people upset because it got overturned by the Supreme Court, but that just meant that Judge Burge at the time was wrong on what he did legally. And so if you all think that I did something wrong with Nancy Smith, I would probably suggest that you read David Miraldi's book and go for chapter 39 where he goes and
All
says
right.
it.
We're done with this.
Okay.
This is not what we're here for, ladies and gentlemen. This is to put somebody in office that is going to do the job you're looking for, not what they've done, not what they, have done in their past. This is tonight, right now, about November 5th, period. Next person speaks out in this crowd, I'm going to ask you to leave in front of all these people. JD, what is your opinion of a person that was wrongfully convicted? What would you do about it?
Well, you do whatever you can.
Whatever you can. I mean, listen, we have a high standard of proof. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is high for a reason. It's high because you should take a lot of evidence to convict a person of a crime and jeopardize their freedom. So that's a high standard for a reason. Now, what's the consequence of that? Well, every now and then you're going to get guilty people that walk. That's the cost. And so in reality, that's why you need the standard so high. I mean, listen, doing defense work I believe anybody that holds this office should have a significant amount of time that they did defense work because it opens your eyes up, not only to the community at large and people that don't have it as well as I did, and defending those that had a very rough childhood and in reality were nothing like my life. And it grew me to have a compassion and an empathy that I didn't previously kind of understand. So in doing so, when you do that defense work and you realize that you do have innocent clients every now and then, I think that's important. I think sometimes if you work on one side or the other too long, you kind of, you see everybody as defendants and everybody's guilty. I think doing the defense work made me feel differently because like I said, I was able to meet these clients, I humanized them. And in doing so, I was able to kind of keep an open mind. And I'm always careful to think about the idea that I'm wrong. I mean, I think that if you're the smartest individual in a room, you're probably in the wrong room. So I like to surround myself with people that are smarter than me if I can, and because I'm always willing to learn. And so the idea of being open to the idea that you're wrong and that you may have gotten it wrong is key. And so I think that's something that I found.
All right. All right, Tony.
I think it was his, actually.
What's that?
It's him first this time.
Were you a hall monitor in high school, Tony?
Yep.
No, actually, JD, it is his.
All right. Well, you were right, Tony.
All right. If elected or reelected, how would you expedite cases so they don't sit for years?
Something that I've always kind of thought about was I remember working in Judge Rothgary's courtroom for the first time. Maybe not for the first time, but after a while. And he had a process of setting cases for trial early. And I think that was a benefit that helped the state out maybe a little bit more than the defendant. For example, I think time helps defendants. I think that's why you get defense counsel that are willing to kind of continue the case for a year and a half if they're able to do it. So I think somehow setting a more timely schedule on trials, I think that's always the best way to do it because a guy like Judge Rothgary, he's not interested in continuing your case because you're not prepared, for example. That's not going to work. So I think if lawyers have learned that lesson. When you come unprepared, you're going to go forward. And I think holding the defendants to a date certain that they're actually going to have a trial is probably the most efficient way to get cases through. A lot of judges don't like that. I'm not certain exactly why. I always thought it was efficient when I was practicing in the courtrooms. But I think that if you probably look at the dockets, I would imagine Judge Rothgary has a lower docket than most other judges.
All right. Same question, Tony. If elected or reelected, how would you expedite cases so they don't sit for years?
Well, most of the continuances seem to happen when it was the defense attorney. So that's a difficult thing to do because all they have to do is go to the judge and say, I'm going to be ineffective. And he's not going to want it back on appeal. That doesn't apply to the state. What I would do is something that I think has become a problem. I think you need to review your cases much earlier. I think that is one of the downfalls of the matrix system that they currently use. It's easy to do discovery. You're not reading the things. You're just attaching them to a form, hitting plus, 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 and it goes out. When you had to sit down, read it, and type up your documents, you figured out where the weaknesses were in your case. You called the police officers. You tried to fix those things. You found the evidence that might not have been tested. And when you're prepared to go earlier, you can go earlier. But when you go through and all of a sudden it's a month before trial and you realize a piece of evidence wasn't tested and you think it's an important piece of evidence, well, you're not going to get the lab to do a DNA swab usually in 2 weeks to get your subpoenas out. So you have to go through and get your people on the same board. And some of it's just resources and being able to do it. I know Judge Kobasher currently forces everybody to trial very quickly, and she now has the lowest criminal docket. That can be difficult, but once you get into the swing and you plan your docket out accordingly. I had 5 trials in a 2-week period of time once with the jury. What you have to do is you can set 3 trials a day. Set one you think it's going to go,
30. And
you take the other 2 that you can get ready for very quickly. An F5 possession, maybe a domestic violence. And the other thing you need to do to stop, you got to find your witnesses early. You got to send out those investigators. You've got to get them to go find them and not just serve those with the sheriff's department's civil subpoenas. It's not going to work. You're going to get tacked to a house. You have to have good personnel working under you that stays in touch. I was lucky. I had Anne Marie. She stayed in touch with my victims. So when I had trial, I had witnesses because thank you. Actually, I'm first this time.
You know, I wish I had CNN's budget so somebody could say it's his turn now.
I'm just trying to keep it fair.
How do you plan on hiring or reclaiming employees? Handwriting again. How do you plan on hiring or reclaiming employees?
Well, I have a lot of connections through the state of people that I worked criminal cases with. One of the things I had to do, because I had done the 13 death penalty cases, is I would assist Erie County when they had one, and Medina County when it was Dean Holman, and we would go through the evidence together. When you build those kind of relationships, and when I was at the AG's office, you built other relationships, the people that are close, that may want an opportunity to come and go into the criminal division that have the experience, but they're going to want stability, and they're going to want to know that they're being treated nice. And the fact that the turnover that happens at this point is so severe makes people leery on wanting to go there. So I think you have to start with the culture to begin with, and then you have to provide them the support to show that we're in this together. Nobody's really more important than the other person, whether it's the secretarial pool, whether it's the prosecutor. We all have things that need to get done to have a successful prosecution. And when you treat other people like they're not as important as others, they leave, or they just do their job by turning a bolt and they don't care enough to go the extra mile and make things happen.
All right. How do you plan on hiring? And I'm sorry, I figured out this handwriting, retaining employees.
Well, listen, when you don't have jobs, I can't stress this enough. When you don't have job descriptions where the employees know what they're meant to do, there's no standards. And so when you implement them for the first time, there's going to be turnover. I mean, it's not rocket science. And now, listen, if anybody that's not in the business of hiring people might not know that this is not a prosecutor issue. This is a labor market issue. It's difficult to find labor in any market. So the idea that they're not coming here because they're treated differently, I mean, listen, I don't think anybody in that office would say I'm a tyrant. I don't think anybody would say that. In fact, I think they would say that I know about their families. I ask them about what's going on with their lives. And the fact that, you know, we had some turnover because we implemented rules. I mean, I'm not ashamed of that. That's going to happen. Sometimes you get late, you know, people, if they show up too late, too many times, you got to get rid of them. It's not something I like to do. I think people would describe me as a nice guy. I think I'm a, you know, they always said, be a good man, don't be a nice guy. Well, I think I'm a good man. And I think that by implementing these rules and keeping it a little tighter in the office, I think that it's benefited everybody. Now they know exactly what their role is when they didn't know it before. So we get like any other industry or any other business or any other workplace, is that, you know, it's tough to find labor. It's a little bit tough. But we're going to get through it like we have been. Like I said, in the end, crime is going down.
30.
The proof is in the pudding. It's there. You know, we can't be handling a god-awful office if crime is going down in the major cities in Lorain County. It just can't be possible.
All right, we have time for about one more question, and then they will each have 2 minutes to close before we go home tonight. So, JD, it is obviously your turn.
I don't know. You sure, Tony?
We could coin flip on this one. I don't care.
This is the same exact question we just had, so we're going to pick another card.
All right. There's been a lot of those.
Well, there's not too many things you can ask about the prosecutor's
I guess you're right.
office. What will you do if you are not elected prosecutor?
I think that's to me.
Yes.
You know, I don't know. You know, I don't know. I've thought about that because even though I'm optimistic that we're going to win, there's always a part of the contingent plan. And so, listen, I have no idea. You know, I love the practice of law. I love doing defense work. You know, would I go back to that? I don't know. It was tough to get paid. And then you have overhead for the first time. And if you never worked in the private market, you wouldn't know exactly what I'm talking about. But the truth of the matter is, it's tough out there. So if you survive, that means you must be doing something right. And I did survive. And we, you know, politics got in the way, and my money went downwards, not upwards. But the reality of it is, I really don't know. I think that in doing this job and getting involved in politics, you meet a lot of interesting people. And in doing so, maybe you meet people that could offer opportunities to you in the future. I'm interested in the business world, I guess, if this wasn't, but this is my love. This is what I love to do. This is the best job on the face of the planet. I mean, I wake up every day and I'm thankful that I'm able to go to work and do what I do. I think we've made such great improvements. I want to continue those. But the reality of it is, maybe it's wishful thinking or positive thinking, but I haven't thought too much ahead on what I would do afterwards. Like I said, I could always go back to the practice of law, so that's always in my back pocket. But I'm always open to new opportunities. But that's not what I'm focusing on. I'm focused on winning this race and being the county prosecutor in Lorain County for a long time.
All right, Tony, what will you do if you are not prosecutor?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is rest for a while because this is a grind. Next, I had opportunities to go back from where I started. I could go back to the Attorney General's office. I enjoy prosecuting because it allows me to help people. It allows to hold people accountable and keep the county safe. And crime is down. It's the same national statistic. It's not one department or one office. It's the same statistics across the country right now. But what is more important to me is that you hold the people accountable and keep people safe. For me, it'd be 31 years next year, but I still like it. So I would probably continue to go out, prosecute, maybe go back to the Special Prosecutions Unit under Dave Yost. I mean, he had endorsed me at one of our Avon Lake Avon Republican clubs. So I think I would be able to go back there. Maybe I would explore other activities, but I think I would do that. I don't expect to lose.
You guys have allotted us enough time for one more question.
Oh, good.
And we'll come back and give you both a chance to close out. I'm sorry. I'm putting it down, Tony.
I wasn't going to say anything this time.
Do you think staying with a political party is good, or can you flip-flop?
Can you flip-flop?
Is that to Tony? Or is that me?
Yeah, Tony goes first.
Well, I mean, the county has been made out of flip-flopping so far. I mean, Judge Cook has been Republican, Judge Cook has been Democrat. Burge was once the head of the Republican Party. Now he's a Democrat that ran for judges. I think ideologies changed at time. I was registered for a Democrat for a time, but I was a Republican that was nominated to take the position of prosecutor with 3 other people when Jeff Manning died. So when it came to what I was running for, it's always been under the Republican ticket. To be honest, I actually switched to Democrat to vote against Jim Burge when he was running for judge, because there was a primary. There were 3 people, and I felt strongly it would be a poor thing if he was in that position, which turned out to be true when he was prosecuted. So, yeah, I think you can flip sides, but you can't flip your ideology. Sometimes the parties themselves change their ideology a little bit, and you have to stay true to yourself.
All right, JD, same question.
All
Do
right.
you think staying with a political party is good, or can you flip?
It's good if you believe the tenets of that party, I guess. I mean, switching parties just to vote somebody and then switching back. I mean, listen, that's not me. Would I ever switch political parties? I don't know if my philosophy changes. If the party goes too far from where I was, I guess that's always possible. I don't know. But what I can tell you is I've never flipped flops, ever. Now, does that mean that my philosophies aren't going to change as I get older? No. Have they changed a little bit? Yeah. I'm a different guy than I was, 10 years ago. I've probably become a little bit more conservative Democrat than I was before. That's probably true. I would probably, I like to characterize myself as a pro-law enforcement, pro-labor kind of guy. That's what I am. And I grew to have a lot of respect for police officers. That was as interesting as it sounds. It was. I realized how difficult a job they had. And, as a kid, you try to avoid them like the plague. But when you get older, you really respect what they've done. You respect what they do. They put their lives on the line every day. So, yeah, I mean, you should maybe change parties if you start to change ideology. But it shouldn't be superficial. It should be real. And it should happen several times. I mean, people tend to change parties over time. They tend to become more conservative over time. So the idea of maybe changing parties once makes sense. Multiple times doesn't. That seems opportunistic. But the truth of the matter is, if I were ever to change parties, it was because I had a genuine change of my political philosophy.
All right, thank you, JD. Due to time constraints, I'm going to give each one of you 45 seconds to wrap the night up. I know that doesn't seem like a lot of time, but you can say a lot in 45 seconds. So, JD started. Tony, you get the first.
I ask you for your support. I'm clearly the more experienced person that has dealt with the cases. I have held people accountable. I have made cases better. I have tried some of the largest cases this county has ever seen. And I didn't just defend people. I've actually been in the courtroom dealing with people from that aspect. I think what's most important is you actually vote. And I don't think my opponent voted until he was much older in life and ran for office. Not so much the party. I think you have to be included so that your voice is heard.
10 seconds.
I hope that you will see, and if you ever have any questions of me, please pick up the phone and call. I'm more than willing to answer anything. Thank you.
JD.
Yes. Listen, we've brought a lot of money into this office, over $500,000. It's never been done before. We've also increased our prosecution, our conviction level of high-level felonies by 12% in the last 3 years. We've increased our prosecution of felony sex offenses by 25%. Listen, folks, we are going after the people that are dangerous in this community and putting them away, but we're also giving people second chances. Let me tell you about my diversion program. We have doubled the amount of people in the diversion program since we took office. What does that do? Well, it doubles the amount of restitution given to victims of crime. And in doing so, we have a 0% felony recidivism rate. That means we are choosing the right individuals to save. And we're doing it at the same time, putting away bad people.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have been able to hear from both JD Tomlinson and Tony Sillo tonight. On our way out the door, you can congratulate and talk to them, but we're out of here at 7:30. We got the room for a half hour. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. I hope you got some information out of that. And if you know somebody who doesn't vote, take them. Take them to the Board of Elections, sign them up to vote, show them how. And tune into the Rusty and Horton Radio Show every Tuesday night on DC and W Radio throughout this political season. You can learn more. Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming.